I'm Jackie.
I'm Kyle, and we have
Selective attention. We love watching movies.
So much, in fact, that we literally surrendered currency in order to analyze, study, and scrutinize them under supervision for 4 years.
But there are so many out there that we have not seen.
Yeah, to be fair, my aforementioned years in college were spent watching almost exclusively the Goonies on repeat and reruns of the Addams Family.
And I spent most of all of my time watching cartoons and artsy indie films.
Yeah, so there's some gaps. Point being, we're always looking for ways to watch films that we have missed out on.
With this in mind, we've decided to make a new segment that we're calling Decades. So we have each been randomly assigned a decade, and then a year within that decade, a genre, and then a film that fits that.
Yeah, the decades range from the 1930s to the 2010s, and the genres, there's 4 of them, action adventure, sci-fi fantasy, horror, and comedy.
Yep. The only other rule that we have is that we can't have seen this film before.
A few days ago, we used an online randomizer to choose decade, year, genre, and film. My decade was the 1940s, narrowed it down to 1946. My genre was science fiction fantasy. And then finally, I randomized all of the science fiction fantasy movies within that particular year. And I landed on The Crimson Ghost.
Mine was the 2000s and 2006, horror, and then Black Christmas.
Yeah! So join us as we begin our first discussion of Selective Attention Decades. Right off the bat, those of you that aren't familiar with the film, you've undoubtedly seen the co-opted image of the Crimson Ghost on buttons, t-shirts, jacket patches of many a concert goer or mohawked punk for the past 30-ish years, thanks to a little 1970s/1980s horror punk band called The Misfits. And if you're looking for a plot synopsis from the perspective of the antagonist of this movie, just go ahead and listen to The Crimson Ghost by The Misfits. By
The Misfits?
The Mits by... back to the film.
Yeah, okay.
It's a fun, actiony serial type akin to Green Hornet, where the plot of the compiled pieces feels very stop and go due to the nature of the serial itself, which is just a long-form narrative consisting of shorter subjects exhibited into like a consecutive order at one theater, generally advancing weekly. So if you don't know what a serial is, go check it out, because Jaki doesn't have time for this shit. So you've got a lot of obstacles that seem very, very important for about 15 minutes and then they fall off. Also, it was kind of written during a time period where screenwriters might have not known much about science.
Give me that wrench there, will you? Sure.
People are clearly doing science stuff because they're pouring sort of obscure smoky liquids into beakers. That camp adds to the appeal of this movie. I mean, also the acting isn't great either. This year had like The Big Sleep and It's a Wonderful Life. A few years later, you had like Streetcar Named Desire. But I mean, what do you expect with lines like,
Bring him and the cyclotrode over, and I'll show him something he'll never forget. Okay, I'll bring him over.
It was a little goofy. It was a little Mystery Science Theater 3000 pick.
That was the vibe
beginning.
I got. Yeah, I was half expecting like Crow, Tom Servo, like on the corner of the screen, like just kind of tearing this thing apart.
Yeah.
Regardless of all the negative things that I just said, it's a lot of fun to watch. And the action is pretty great for the time period. It's very Captain Kirky, Adam West, Batman, like set smashing fun.
Oh my god, yeah.
Charles Quigley is basically 1940s Indiana Jones, which makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because Lucas modeled Indiana Jones off of action stars from the serial era. He's got a jaw made of iron and he gets into a brawl like every 10 to 15 minutes. The real star of this film is Linda Sterling as Diana. She is tough as hell, and she knows how to bail out of a doomed vehicle and fights alongside old Iron Jaw and flies planes, discusses strategies. She's a badass. She's awesome.
Active through the entire thing. She's not passive, which was fun to watch.
Yes. So do I recommend The Crimson Ghost? yeah, screw it. Why not? It's a lot of fun. If anything, just put it on in the background while you're like baking bread or something.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to my selection from the 2000s. So when this came up, I let out an audible like noise, like sigh, like my soul kind of dropped. I was about to just like do it again. Like, do I have to? Oh God, what have I done?
You fucked up.
Black Christmas in 2006 is directed by Glenn Morgan. He wrote Final Destination with James Wan and Jeffrey Riddick. He also directed the Willard remake. It stars a lot of early 2000s people you might be familiar with. So there's Katie Cassidy, Michelle Trachtenberg, Lacey how do you say her last name? Chabert. Lacey Chabert. Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I didn't realize how much I disliked Mary Elizabeth Winstead to watching this film. She is, she's done some interesting things, but I feel like she's kind of one note.
I've seen her in a few things recently too.
Yeah.
She keeps popping up. We just watched Birds of Prey. Like,
yeah, and it was the same thing. I was like, oh my gosh, it's the same. She hasn't grown as an actress. But
she's got a crossbow now.
I think it's important to mention that the reason I never watched this film when it came out in 2006 was because the original Black Christmas, directed by Bob Clark, is not only, and this film's from 1974, it's not only one of my favorite horror films, it is one of my favorite films that's ever been made. I love it dearly. So watching the remakes, I've just kind of been putting it off and not wanting to do it. If you go into this 2006 never watching the original Black Christmas, or if you can somehow divorce yourself from that experience, it's a very violent and campy film. Mm-hmm. And it can be enjoyable if that's what you are wanting and needing at that time. It's kind of reminiscent of some 80s slasher films. The acting is not great. The dialogue is very ham-fisted.
We have to open Billy's present first. It's a tradition.
I'm really not okay with any of this. Buying a Christmas present for a serial killer?
Billy lived here.
I'm not even gonna say cliched, it just doesn't fit. There's just a lot of lines that are said and you're just like, why is this being said by these people?
Ever seen the backseat of a sleigh?
There was a lot of choices that were made that I'm very confused by. Like, why is the antagonist, the killer, yellow? So they chalked it up to like a liver disease he was born with or something. But why? Like, it doesn't add anything and it's just strange and it just pulls you out of the film every single time.
Maybe that was it. He was...
No. Cut that.
Okay.
The other thing that kept like freaking me out is the sorority house that this takes place in appears to just be made of plywood. Like every single wall you can like hack through with
It's
like
not
a punch.
structurally sound.
They're standing in the bathroom, and there's like, it looks like the floor is like this thick. It looks like it's just one little piece of plywood, but they're walking around and it gets wet.
You know you've lost Jackie when she starts worrying about the structural integrity of the...
This film is also completely, like, the storyline is driven by inserts. I've never seen so many strange random close-ups of objects that are supposed to, like, tell me something. I mean, I get that the director probably had a clear goal with this film, and I know they had a lot of studio interference. I'm not gonna recommend this film. I think if you are looking for a slasher to watch, there are so many good ones that came out in the early 2000s that you can have your pick. Even if you're looking for campy ones, I think there's better films out there than this one.
Failed.
As much as I didn't like the film that was chosen for me, I'm glad we did do this because it got us out of our comfort zone. I was forced to watch something I was adamantly avoiding. And in Kyle's case, we watched something that we would have never even known existed. We like this. We want to continue this segment and just kind of maybe do one a month so that we get to watch a film we've never seen before.
It's a lot of fun. I think maybe we'll keep going on the decades train.
How would we end this nicely?
I don't know. Decades.
Sounds like a strip club, the way you say it.
Oh my God, could you imagine a strip club of just like...
Name decades?
Of decades? Starting with people in their 20s all the way to like octogenarians?
I was thinking of not that. I was thinking of like...
I'm going to start a GoFundMe. That sounds awesome.
I wasn't thinking of that.
I like that.
Like themes from different decades, not like people from different decades. Oh my God, okay, bye.